I'm painting it as you see it, but you're allowed to change things. But I am mixing this mesquite that's way up in the foreground, a slightly warmer tone. Today I'm going to be creating a painting on location here in southern Arizona. I really want to capture these purple shadows and this distant hill back here. I think it's got the scene just has a really good lead in. It has a nice road that's leading up into the distance. There's some vibrant greens in the bushes since it is monsoon here in Arizona. And there are some interesting rocks in the distance, which will help lead us even further back into those purplish mountains that I'm really liking to capture. I'm going to try to break the scene down into very simple shapes, and then we'll get a little bit more complex as we go there. And I'll show you how you can use your reference material that you're looking at, but then you can also add a little bit of creativity in order to make the painting a little bit more exciting. So I'm going to jump in right here so I don't lose those shadows, and hopefully I'll be able to record my painting surface here so that you can see the mixtures as well as the painting and the scene all at the same time. That's what I'm hoping for. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I'm going to jump right in here. My colors here are titanium white. This is Hansa yellow. I usually use either azo lemon yellow or cadmium yellow medium, but I thought this was going to be a replacement for the cadmium medium, and it's not. It's closer to the azo lemon. So yeah, I'll just use that one yellow. This is yellow ochre. This is alizarin permanent. Naphthol red, which is a cadmium red light replacement. Transparent red oxide. Ultramarine blue. And then I'm using a little bit of liquid. It will make it so the painting doesn't take forever to dry. I'm just going to tone the canvas here with the transparent red oxide. And the sun is behind the clouds right now, so my plan is to get a rough drawing in of the major masses, but then it will change. The drawing will change when that sun comes out so that I can draw the shadows. I like to create a gradation on my panel to start, with the transparent red oxide being deeper and darker on the bottom of the panel. That kind of already starts to create a feeling of depth in the painting. These brushes are the Princeton Catalyst brushes. They're called the Poly Tip. They're a synthetic hog bristle brush. I'm just going to draw in with the same color that I toned the canvas with. Now I'm thinking about the spacing of this, how much foreground, how much of the distant mountains, and how much of the sky. I don't want to put the horizon line right halfway, so I'm going to bring it down a little bit. And I don't want to create a band with equal shapes. I want all of the shapes to be different sizes. So there's my horizon. And I think I'm going to keep this strip in the middle a little bit narrower. And I'm thinking about where I want my main focal area, which is going to be the purple hills in the distance. I'm going to put it over here to the right a little bit. And just thinking of large masses here. That's that little bluff. Here's the purple mountain. Large masses, not thinking about every single little bump and turn. Sometimes it helps me to think about these shapes almost like an animal shape. So like this here could be a bird compared to this other shape here. It could be some type of dolphin or something. Okay, and then there's some interesting rocks that come down, which I think will help lead us towards this. There's a road that is interesting. It's right here. So this is that hillside. There's a road thing there. That thing. Rather than have this road come straight towards me, I'm going to try to make that a little bit more interesting. This is what I'm talking about in terms of taking your scene and having it interesting, and painting it as you see it, but you're allowed to change things if something isn't quite what you're looking for. Okay, and then this, I'm just gonna have this whole green mass, and then we're gonna jump it forwards with another separation here. These are the mesquite trees that are up in the foreground. I'm gonna just add a couple more because I changed the composition here. And the sun's coming from the right hand side, so I'm just gonna remind myself that this side is all shadow of those mesquites. And okay, so that's gonna all be bushes. The idea is not to paint exactly what you're seeing in terms of the design of the painting, but you do want to try to capture those colors and those values. I think I like that, and I actually really like the color of these distant hills. So this is what's going to change the most, I believe, in the painting as the sun gets higher in the sky. So I'm going to try to capture that right now. I'm going to get some sky color in to start. That kind of helps me key the painting correctly. And I'm seeing a little bit of yellow mixed into that ultramarine blue and white. See how this compares. Yeah, I think that's a good starting point. So I'm just gonna smush that into the whole sky area here. And we can always come back with the color to get the shapes better of those mountains. Big shapes, getting the surface covered as quickly as possible. And as we go up into the sky, further away from the horizon, it gets a little bit darker. Just getting it covered here. And also the further, as the sky moves away, from the sun, over here it's a little bit darker as well. I don't want to get too caught up in this stuff, but it is something to think about. Okay, need more paint. This is a 12 by 16, so it's a little bigger than I usually work on location. Okay. All right, those distant hills have already shifted color, so I want to get that in now. And I'm comparing it to the sky color. I'm going to mass it in all as one and then come back in with those bluer shadows. See how this relates. A little too dark. Okay, I like that. I'm just going to mass in that whole entire area. Now I'm thinking about the drawing a little bit. Overlapping my drawing slightly. Now I'm just thinking about the silhouette of the hill a little bit. Okay, and then I'm gonna put the shadows in right away because that light is changing and I'm probably not gonna have any shadows on those hills at all here shortly. So I'm mixing up a darker, slightly darker value and bluer value. And I'm gonna go straight in and try to get some of those shadow shapes that I'm seeing. I think that that's working. There's a hard edge on one side of that shadow. And slightly softer on this other side. And there's another small one here. And there's sort of a line of this hill here and a couple shadow shapes up here. I'm really paying attention to the design of these shapes and how much space is in between each of them. They should each be unique in their shape, and they should have different spacing between each. basically ultramarine blue back here. Okay, that's pretty good. I'm gonna get the relationship of this next hillside here, which I'm seeing as it's going to be slightly darker and a little bit warmer as that hillside moves forward. I'm seeing a little bit of red and a little bit of yellow mixed in. And I mix it right next to my previous mixture so that I can compare. And let's see how this looks. I'm gonna lay it down right next to that other big shape. Okay, now that's too dark, quite a bit too dark. So as I lighten it up with a little white, I'm gonna add some yellow to it so that I can still maintain that temperature. I think that's a good starting point, and I can always adjust over the top to get some broken color. So I'm just gonna block this whole area in. I often paint with brush strokes in the direction of the form. It helps just create that illusion of three-dimensionality. Now there's lots of texture in these rocks over in this hillside right here. And I'm going to achieve that by leaving the underpainting here. These directional strokes help lead us back into the painting. I'm gonna leave that very loose like that. Okay, and let's just try to get the rest of the surface covered. These hills here are a lighter value, and I'm seeing some kind of pinkish orange colors in that value. Let's see what this looks like. Maybe a little too green. I'll have to come back in to get these shapes better with the other ground color there. I think of laying these large masses in kind of like making a puzzle. You first put all of your pieces in piles close to the area where you might use them, and then later on you get more specific about where those pieces go more precisely. I'm doing my best to get as close as I can to the color and value that I'm seeing, but then at the end I'll make lots of subtle adjustments and leave some of this coming through so that there'll be a variety of colors. Notice how simple this is, but it's still reading. Okay, I'm gonna get the greens and the in the midground here. Start with just big flat mass. I don't want to push it too chromatic yet because I want my most chromatic greens to be up in the foreground. See how this looks. Needs to be a little lighter. That's kind of what I'm seeing, but I don't think I like it that chromatic, so I'm gonna add a little bit of the naphthol red in order to bring that chroma down a little bit. A nice way to create interesting color is to gray your colors with the complementary color. That's what I'm doing here. So I started with green and then I'm adding the red to make it more gray. I graded this area down a little bit more than what I was seeing out there because I thought it would help push the midground into the distance a little more and give me a little bit more space to add more chroma to the foreground. Okay. Now, even though this road is different, I can still use the colors that I'm seeing here in the road that's in front of me. I'm going to mix up the shadow on the road first, which I'm seeing as a fairly warm purplish shadow. Let's try this. And I want to compare these values and colors to each other. This hill started a little bit too dark, so I'm going to have to lighten that up later. I think that'll work for the foreground shadow here. As these cast shadows move into the distance, it's important to think about them getting smaller and also getting narrower from top to bottom, and the spaces in between them getting closer together. That will help those shadows kind of sink into the distance. Purple. I cut it out in most spots, but you will hear me walking back and forth a few times. It really helps to step back from the painting and kind of look at the overall color relationships. Like, I just stepped back and saw that first mark was a little too purple. So I come back and I adjust and I add some more yellow in order to neutralize that purple. It can help add harmony to a painting to carry a color throughout. So the light on the road here, even though I can't really see it poking through the bushes in the other parts of the scene, I do end up putting a few spots here and there just to kind of unify the whole thing. Okay, here I'm just mixing up the shadow side of those mesquites using ultramarine blue, Hansa yellow, and a little bit of the alizarin to neutralize. I'm not sure if it shows up on camera, but I am mixing this mesquite that's way up in the foreground a slightly warmer tone than those other shadows. That will help pull it forward. Now I'm mixing up some of the more distant shadows here. They're going to be a little bit lighter and a little bit cooler than those ones in the foreground. That will help them sit in the distance. So I decided here that that distant mountain was a little bit too dark and a little too purple. So I'm mixing up a lighter value that's a little bit yellower that will go just on the plane of the mountain that's facing the sun. I think it'll help sort of lighten up that distance and also create a better feeling of light. So unfortunately, I bumped the camera during recording and sort of lost the sync between my painting surface and what was recorded. So I'm not going to be able to be showing my palette for the rest of this painting. I'll just cut out a lot of those mixing processes and just focusing on applying the paint and my thoughts during the painting. Here I'm laying in the mid-tone of the mesquites. It's definitely still in the light side. It's lighter than the shadows, but it's not the lightest light on them. I'll come over the top with some more textures of a lighter, more chromatic green in order to make that pop. But I'm just trying to make some interesting textures here with the paintbrush. A lot of artists recommend painting the shadow first and then the light side, but I find you can actually get some really interesting edges if you start with the mid-tone and then paint darks into that mid-tone. Again, you'll see me take this same color that I mixed, which is the creosote bushes. It's got a lot more red in it. And I'm actually taking that color and I'm carrying it throughout the bushes. That way it helps harmonize the whole piece. So at this point, pretty much the whole canvas is covered apart from that spot in the foreground. And I'm going to start doing a little bit of editing of what I've already put down. I'll shift some colors a little bit lighter, a little bit more chromatic, sort of back and forth in order to create some interest within the painting. So in this area, I noticed that it would be helpful to add a little bit more chroma in that distance, that part that I grayed down earlier, to play against the grays, and also slightly lighter. Here I'm starting to lay in the lights in the foreground, and as the objects come closer to your view, you're able to see more texture in those objects. So I'm trying to create a lot more variety of texture in this foreground and have there be more contrast between the light and the dark compared to things that are in the distance. This really helps create that feeling of depth. Again, I'm painting the darks into the lights in this area here. It helps me achieve those interesting edges. And also by having these dark accents up in the foreground, it really pulls it forward in space. I'm starting to add a little bit of detail into these rocks. There's a little bit of vegetation on a ledge up there. You just have to be really careful that you don't have too much contrast in the distance like this, because it's really easy to make a really dark area on top of these light masses, and that really ruins the illusion of space. I noticed back in these hills that they were a little too dark in this area, so I'm taking some of the ground color that's back there and kind of dragging it over the paint that's already set up just a little bit. So it sort of adds a texture. It also lightens the hill and kind of creates that separation between what's vegetation and what's dirt. So if I were just keeping this painting as more a sketch and a reference to use in order to build up a studio painting later on, I might just leave this as it is. But because I wanted to bring it a little bit further to a finish, I decided to paint the sky with a little bit thicker paint and kind of clean it up a little bit, because the initial layer was thinned with mineral spirits and a lot of the underpainting is coming through. I just thought it could be nicer to be a little bit more specific about the silhouette of that distant hill and also get some thicker paint down in the sky so that you can't see the underpainting as much. Now, I noticed that the rocks were a little bit too dark in value, and I tried to lighten it up a little bit, but I went a little bit too blue with the mixture, which is not a problem because it's nice to have warm and cools playing against each other. So I just laid it in with that cooler tone, and then I'll come over the top with something that's like a little bit more yellowish to help get that feeling of light in the painting. Okay, well that's about as far as I can take it today. The light has changed quite a bit. When you start early in the day, that sun changes pretty fast, so you really don't have a lot of time with your color and value structure staying the same. So I feel pretty happy with the painting, how it turned out. This was a 12 by 16, which is a little bit bigger than I usually work on location, but I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. I feel like the relationships between the large masses are really working. I think the composition is interesting, and I really like the textures that I achieved in the foreground. There's something really nice about doing a really fast plein air painting where you don't have time to mess up what you've put down. So I really do like how it's turned out, and we'll see how it looks when I bring it back in the studio. But I think I could combine this with a photograph and with this plein air painting and create something that's a little bit more refined and finished. But I appreciate you stopping by and watching the channel, and we'll see you in the next one.